Hi, everyone. Welcome to Always Looking Up, the podcast where no one is overlooked and height is only a number, never a limit, hosted by me, Jillian Curwin. Each week, I will be having a conversation about what it is like to live in a world that is not necessarily designed for you. In this week's episode, I sat down with Malit Millington. Malit is a disability advocate and reporter at Caribbean Life News, where she covers disability as well as local and world news, politics, sports, and entertainment from a Caribbean American perspective. We discussed her research on the impact of COVID on the disabled community in regards to employment, questions we would like to ask employers about the hiring process, the success rate of ableism, and how it can not just be on the disabled community to fight disability discrimination. Let's get into it. Hi, Malit.
Hello, Jill. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming on. I am very much looking forward to talking with you today. To start, why don't you tell my listeners who may not know a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello, everybody, to everybody listening. First, I'm going to start by just giving a physical description of myself and where I am. I am a Black woman with glasses, and I am wearing a black sweater with a zipper and a hood, and I'm seated on my bed here, and I have the yellow background you see behind me is my wall. And yes, I am a journalist currently at Caribbean Life News, which is a New York City based publication, and I cover pretty much everything, disability included. So that's, you know, a snippet of just who I am and my career and what I do.
Awesome. And we're going to delve into all that and more. Um, and before we do that, though, I do want to ask, and it's a question I ask all of my guests, is how do you define being disabled?
That is a very good question. I would say that I define disability um, as just not being scared to take on the naysayers. Not being scared to, try something new or, uh, just uh, fighting, in all senses of the word. Just not being scared to fight and like speak up for things that, you know, that I feel are important to me. Um, so yeah, I'd say that's how I describe it. Um, and I would also say that if I had to put this in ratio format, I would
Mm-hmm.
say I have this kind of ratio where I say like it involves like perseverance, confidence, and risk. So it's like, I guess, maybe like 85, 15, 10
Okay.
terms of just, being able to persevere through the hard stuff and just, having confidence in my identity as a disabled person, and also just not, being willing to, take risks and just learn, just in general as a human being. So, uh, yeah, I'd say that's how I describe the concept of disability.
I like that. And I think your math with the ratios is pretty spot on. And I've never heard it. You're the first person I've heard of kind of describe that. And I like that aspect that you bring to disability. And again, like that's one of the reasons why I love asking that question is because everyone's answer is very different. And I think that comes from so much of, and wanting to understand that is comes from so much of society trying to tell us what disability means, trying to define us as disabled when really it's incredibly individualized and incredibly personal, and it's us kind of reclaiming our narrative and our identity in a very ableist society and environment. And I really like that you kind of talk about that, and you talk about the risks, because I think, and we've learned this definitely over the past few years, that there are risks with being disabled. And I'm curious, can you go into that a little bit more?
Uh, well, I think it again. I'm gonna preface it by saying that it varies by person
Hmm.
and their individual experience, but I think, in general, risk it just means like again doing the thing that I guess you're like super scared to do, or doing the thing that is uh you know very much, I guess, against the uh very much like outside of the traditional norms
Hmm.
of what the world says disabled people should be um able to do, as and let alone being treated as people.
Right.
That's a whole other conversation, but that's part of it too.
For sure. I feel like often when talking about disability, when the society as a whole talks about disability, they forget that it's individual and that there are individuals at the heart of it. And they so much want to try to, I don't know if they want to say kind of like one size fits all in addressing it, but that's kind of, and you can, that's kind of how it feels like to me. And I'm curious, like, do you think that's kind of how it feels like to you?
I think what I'll say, in general, honestly, two things.
Hmm.
First, the subject in general is not one dimensional. There are just, I mean, just across various conditions and so on, there's just a spectrum of things that can be possible for each individual person that is kind of in that subgroup.
Hmm.
And second, it is definitely intersectional because it does consider class and race and gender and all the other things. It all kind of uh it all just is kind of all under one big umbrella. It's like disability plus other stuff,
Right.
plus just race and all the other things. So yeah, I'd say yeah, it's definitely one dimensional, not one dimensional, and intersectional for sure.
I agree. And it's what something that I have always said on here is that it doesn't discriminate. Like, it affects everyone. All issues in last election, all issues in the elections to come are disability issues, because it's a minority, but it can one day include everyone, in the sense that anyone can become disabled at any time. Not wishing that on anyone, not saying that, but like, it's a fact. And
Yeah. And if more
it,
people could realize that, then we essentially have a more inclusive world. And I mean, accessibility is a whole other umbrella, but we can get into that later on.
yes, absolutely. I want to talk to you a little bit about, which kind of like what drew me to wanting to have this conversation with you and wanting to talk with you is, you're a journalist. So I'm curious, first, what made you want to go into journalism as a career?
Well, I'm going to put this in a nutshell because there's a lot of details, but
Hmm.
um, I've always been just a hardcore nerd. I've always been into, books and um, TV and just anything that's just interesting and that has, depth.
Hmm.
And I've always loved English growing up. English was like my top subject, right behind math. Math was like my second favorite. So again, like going back to the whole ratio I had earlier, that's kind of where that kind of came in.
Yeah.
But yeah, English was my always was and just is, my favorite subject. And I just knew that I wanted to do something in that field, but not in the traditional sense because, with an English degree, you can do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted my work, whatever, whatever work I did that involved writing at its core, I wanted that to, have an impact and really kind of just live on past me. So that's kind of how I got into journalism. And, you know, in terms of my own personal experience, just my life, I just knew that part of, I definitely wanted to include disability as part of that uh, thing of just, being different in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
not just covering the traditional stuff, but also just kind of uh, incorporating the subject that's pretty much not talked about in a positive light often. And you and I both know this, so yeah, that's kind of what got me into the field, and you know kind of why I wanted to you know uh, make disability a part of my coverage in the work that I do as a journalist for my various publications that I've worked with, and the current uh, publication I'm currently working with. So yeah, that sums it up in a nutshell, I think.
And is it, and you can kind of interpret this how you look, 'cause I feel like there's different interpretations of this question. Is it easy to talk about disability as a journalist? Like in your journalism, is it easy, or like how would you define it?
Um, Again, I would say that just covering the subject in general is not it's not the easiest thing to come by just for people in general, but
Mhm.
um especially for um journalists who are disabled like me, and that's across the board regardless of whatever, that's just in the spectrum that it is by specific condition. All those things are spectrums, and so it's definitely not easy for everyone.
Mhm.
But for me, given my experience and given, just the fight I've had to, deal with just to, flat out live, it's just been kind of uh, a catalyst, I guess, for me to just kind of do the things in the field, cover the things in the field that are important to me, but also, you know, uh, you know, make that positive impact that I intend to, you know, leave like on my work. So again, leaving and again making an impact so that it lives past me. So yeah, I guess that would be uh, how I would interpret that question, just given my experience
Yeah.
with disability.
And is there a certain story that you've covered or are currently working on that has really resonated with you, and you feel that it's important that it's talked about from, not just talking about disability, but it's talked about from a disabled voice, that a disabled voice is covering it?
I think if I had to pick, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say a story, but I think I mean, we could probably dig into this a little bit more, but my master's project that I did for for my master's degree, my capstone project that I did centered on uh, the uh, disability community in the city and the work challenges uh, that they have like faced, and COVID's influence on all of that.
Mhm.
So I'd say that that's been something I did that I published last a year and change ago. So that's been just seeing the impact of that. Uh, is, just kind of hearing from folks who've read it and just saying like, how good how good how good it was, how well written it was, and just how much they loved it, and just hearing that, getting the positive reaction that it's got has just been great uh, to just know that I did something that is not only you know positive for me, but also just the community at large. So yeah, I'd say that that's like been the biggest thing. Uh, One of the biggest projects that I've worked on in my career that has really made that impact that I intend to do with the rest of my work.
That's amazing. And let's kind of talk. I want to delve more into that because I think I saw somewhere recently, like we're at the 3-year anniversary of, I think, the beginning of COVID. And I've seen it talked about, and it was this worldwide, this global disabling event that we're still dealing with. It's not over. Um, So I kind of want to talk about this project more because I think it is so important um, for us to talk about. And so, let's go to the beginning. Where did the idea for this project come from?
Uh, Again, I think for me, part of it was just, you know, given my experience, but also just knowing how COVID has made people become disabled. It's just, shout out to the long COVID crew out there. You guys are just amazing. Um, and just kind of reading and seeing, how COVID's, impacted people and made them become disabled, as well as, that, as well as just my personal experience. And also, given that I was, from what I can tell, I was the only physical disabled person in my cohort at J school. So, and
Hmm.
I went to CUNY J school, by the way. So knowing that and just my experience, I felt like why not cover something for my master's project that nobody in the history of the school has ever done? Why not make
Yeah.
history that way? So, I felt like, super empowered by that. So, you know, and after 10 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days, it was finally out. And so, you know, uh, it was really rewarding to see that that it was out in the world, and that, even now it's still gaining traction, and just seeing the reactions from folks in the community has just been really really rewarding for me, just to know that, hey, I can do a lot more like this, a lot more stuff like this, and I have done a lot since then. So yeah, it's that's kind of what got me interested in deciding to do this particular thing for my project. So
That's awesome. I love that you touched on the fact that you said you were the only disabled person in your cohort. Um,
physically disabled, yes, by my yeah, from everybody, that, yeah, I was like the only person that literally I had to do. I mean, with COVID, it's a blessing because I was able to do my whole program remotely, so
mhm.
that was a plus. And yeah, all my professors were just really accommodating and lenient with that. So kudos to everybody over there. You guys rock. I literally wouldn't. I just I commend everybody for just being willing to work with me to, you know,
Hmm.
to make it happen. So yeah,
You love that. Um, yeah, but you talk about, like being only visibly and like so often, because and speaking for myself, I know speaking to others, like we're often a lot of times the only visibly disabled person in the room. We'll never be able to say like that we're the only, because there are people with invisible
right.
disabilities who
Yes.
may choose to disclose, which is absolutely their right.
Yes.
Um,
Totally. Totally.
and it does often feel lonely. But I think, and you've clearly done it, like so often though, when you are the only person, yes, it's lonely, but it's also turns into a moment of empowerment. And I love that you
Yeah.
took that and not just like said, you know what, I'm gonna, just be this program, but you're gonna create something that has, talk about something from an issue, from a perspective that hasn't been talked about before. Um, and to truly like embrace it and say, we need to be talking about this. This is important. And you're just like, I'm going to do it. It hasn't been done before, but I'm going to do it. I love that.
Yeah. I just knew that I wanted to have I wanted the community to feel empowered. Like, hey, like I'm I'm in here. I hear all of your your stories. I'm I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to you know make this into something that uh, has a positive impact and also changes the world. So kudos to me for
Yes. Absolutely. Kudos to you.
yeah. So I'm glad I'm helping to change the world in that way, and I will definitely share the links for you.
Yes. I will get that. We're going to put a pin in that because I'll be getting all that information from you at the end. Don't worry.
So yeah,
Um,
that's kind of yeah, that kind of
awesome.
sums up just
Yeah.
that.
So let's talk about it a little more. So you started this and you wrote this during COVID.
Yes.
Well, we're still in COVID, but like during COVID, did your research start at the beginning of the pandemic, or did it start prior to COVID?
So it was project dropped on December 29th of 2021, and as I said, it took 10 months, 3 weeks and 3 days. So it started probably around February 2021 is when I started.
Okay.
Let me just run that math really fast. Um, let's see. From March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Yeah, so right around I think March was when I like officially started, but I had been, doing all the prep stuff. I did the prep stuff while I was in the fall in my fall semester at T school. I pretty much worked it, and I worked like the prep stuff during the summer while I was doing my internship
Okay.
for my master's. So it was yeah, I'd say around February, March-ish is when I um officially like got going on it.
Gotcha. And where, like, for your research, what was the starting point? Because you're saying if this is 2021, so like COVID is still kind of, it's only a
Yes.
year in. So like, does your research start before COVID? Did you look, or like right at the beginning of COVID? Like, where does your research start?
Or I think yeah, I believe it was right around I mean at that point we're a year in, so I kind of uh I think mm, yeah, kind of I guess it started like early on in the pandemic, and just um, again hearing from folks who've um, at that point we're a year in, so there's some experience to kind of
Mhm.
get started. So I kind of went with that, and built from there, and just added more voices to it. So I'd say, if I remember correctly, that's kind of like early on in the pandemic is kind of when the research kind of got going, and that's kind of when, for many folks, that's, yeah, for many of the sources I spoke to, that's kind of uh, when I kind of really got a lot of their accounts, around a lot of their accounts happened early in the pandemic, so I'd say around then.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what questions were you asking?
Um, I mean, I was just kind of getting them to share their disabled experience, as well as just the struggles they've had, just particularly with transportation, and um, and just like job hunting, and also remote work, given that COVID was and still is,
Mhm.
around. So those were the three, like, branches of my project that I focused on. So yeah, so I was asking all those kinds of questions. So I for the transportation aspect, I focused heavily on Accessoride, which is, again, you can read the piece that I did on that. That's just
Yeah. We're going to have links to it. We're going
oh,
to get there. I'm going to
oh
give you
yeah.
a chance to plug it.
So so there was all that stuff, and then just the job hunting slash remote work. A lot of folks were saying that, and it's I'm pretty sure it's very true still today, that they were um, they found it easier to do a lot of work from home, just because it
Yeah.
was easier to, less, in terms of transportation, less planning and all that, and just because planning and strategizing for something in person as a disabled person is a lot. I know for me, it's a lot to do,
Yeah.
to be in, like, as journalists. If I have to be, you know, between the office of my job, and, like, to be somewhere covering an event in person in the same day, that's a lot,
Mhm.
because I don't travel on my own, so I always have someone with me, taking me to places and stuff, which I'm grateful for, truly. So I know that side of things, and then job hunting stuff, just, I mean, and on that, like, I talked to, for on the job hunting aspect, a lot of folks were saying that discrimination was definitely prevalent, and it's, shouldn't be, but it is. But again, Judy, you are amazing. We literally wouldn't have what we have, all the policies and stuff, without you. So rest in power. Um.
Mhm.
So yeah. Discrimination was definitely a key talking point for a lot of folks. Um. That, like, but when it comes to their certain employers, it was definitely a key talking point for them. Um. And yeah. So I'd say that kind of sums up the project in a nutshell.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, no, first, shout out to Judy Human. We're recording this around, I believe it's 10 days as of recording this that we lost her. And all you can say is rest in power and thank you, Judy. And it's not even enough, but um, yeah, she's the reason I think a lot of us are where we are today. And I'm not saying I think she is. She is. I will say she is. I'm not going to say I think. I know for a fact.
yeah.
Um, but you talked about having people share their experiences with discrimination. Was it discrimination during the hiring process or discrimination once they were employed? Like, can you talk a little bit more about the discrimination that they were facing?
It was kind of, I'd say honestly, a little bit of both,
Yeah.
but more about more like, um, I guess, and we can talk about this for some folks. It was also just um more the latter of like once they got once they kind of did the interview stuff and they got the gig, then it kind of seemed like it was more like there was more discrimination in that sense. But again, you can read the project for uh, you
Yeah.
know for accurate stuff. But yeah, I'd say a bit of it of both, but more the latter. And I think part of it also was just, I guess, disclosing. A lot of folks talked about, I guess, the dichotomy of just existing in the world, being disabled and living your life, and also just and just you know making contributions to the world, while also, I mean, you have that, and then you also have like the side of just, again, discrimination, and just not necessarily being scared to disclose, but just, I guess, just being accepted once you disclose, and fairly getting a shot at
Yeah.
said gig. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, but that's what I would say for that. Again, you can read the
Yeah.
project for more accurate stuff.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you talk about disclosure, because
Yeah, and I know for me, because of just my experience, and for folks listening, I am I have cerebral palsy, which is, I'll sure link to that too, because there's a lot there that goes into that. And for me, and I mean, we could, another tangent that I don't think I necessarily brought up in my project, but something
yeah.
that is also kind of a weird, uh, weird dichotomy where two things are clashing is just being in the group that kind of that like passes as able-bodied. That's a whole other thing.
Mhm.
'Cause there are folks like me that are that don't really, I don't use uh I mean, physical mobility aids
Yeah.
anymore. Anyway, I used to when I was a kid. I used to use foot braces, but that's a whole other element of just disability, and just the whole thing of visible versus invisible. I mean,
Mhm.
across the board, we're human. Like,
Right.
we're disabled people are human, and we make valuable contributions to the world. Whether you notice, no, whether you notice us or not, whether you see the impact we're having or not, we are contributing to some of the you know really you know crucial, important stuff in our world. So, and that is part of, I'd say that's part of the takeaway that I want folks to uh have when they take in my project. Like, hey, look, we're human, we have lives, we exist, and we shouldn't be treated as less than human. So,
Mhm.
again, Judy, she goes into all this in depth, but
Yeah.
without the 504 you guys, without the capital crawl, without Judy doing all that she's done, we would not have what we have. So,
No.
but again, that I'd say that's my takeaway for folks that take in my project.
Yes. I so much I agree with you said. It's like it's interesting because I know, and I'm curious if you talked about this with the people you interviewed for this project, with the fact that it's a voluntary disclosure form now in a lot of applications asking if you are or not disabled, and they give you three options: yes, no, I choose not to answer, and it. Part of me
Yeah,
understands why I guess they want to know in the application, but also at the same time I kind of don't. So like regardless of like why they're asking this in the first place, it feels like though as a disabled person, I'm curious as your thoughts as well because I'm also someone I don't know if I consider myself able passing, um, in a sense, I guess, because I have four arms or four in a sense because I have four limbs and I'm ambulatory. Um, but at the same time, I don't think I am it's like society doesn't see
yeah,
me as non-disabled. It's a weird
yeah. I
dichotomy
mean,
there. It's not
yeah,
truly but the question itself, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, like we can't choosing not to answer, no non-disabled person is going to say I don't wish to answer that
yeah,
question.
yeah, for sure.
So anyone who chooses to answer that question is still kind of signaling that they are disabled because why why would you not disclose that you're non-disabled?
Right. Yeah, and that's. I mean, again, going back to the whole able passing thing, I'd say that that's what fits me personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think again that's such a tight rope. That's such a that's such a tug of war. So I mean, again, it depends on the person and just their experience and for me, I feel like not that I'm forced to, but I have to just because of I know my challenges and limitations and stuff. So I know that just closing up front has to be the top thing for me because of just given my experience and what I have to deal with, as I mentioned earlier, with transportation and all of that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but honestly, I think, again, it's up to the person. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but,
For sure.
um, you know, I mean, more than the person disclosing, I think it's on the employers to just be open, be open and truly be inclusive. Like the whole what's this thing called? The EEO thing, the Equal Opportunity Employer, whatever it's called.
Equal
Like,
Employment Opportunity Commission.
yeah, that thing. Yeah, that just that whole statement of like, diversity and like we don't just face on face and all the things. Like being true to that is key for employers across the board, regardless of wherever you are in the world and whatever uh, field you're in, you
Mhm.
know, I'd say just staying true to that is like a top notch thing. Uh, Obviously, it's also just all the things of the, revised ADA with all the, uh, elevators and all the things, the transportation and the doors and all the, all the buttons and all the everything, just all
Yeah.
that stuff. Just staying true to that is like a key thing for ensuring that that the community is truly thought about and truly represented. So that's I'll just cap it there because I'm not like
Yeah, that's great. Totally fine. Did you talk to employers in your
um
research?
honestly, no, I wanted to focus solely on the community and truly get a really authentic, true disabled experience, and that was the focus. Like I don't want to hear from. I want to be part of the, I know I'm part of the community, and so hey, like I want to hear from the folks that are actually experiencing it and really like, get them to share, their experience and their viewpoints on the stuff. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Absolutely. But then I'm curious then, as a journalist who has just, or not just, but who did this incredible master's project, who covers disability issues, who covers stories from a disabled perspective, if you could do an addendum to this project where you would talk to employers, what questions would you ask them?
oh, I mean, there are so many.
Yeah.
But I think if I had to pick, maybe, I don't know, three, I'd say first off, what like what are your actual policies in terms of, like, beyond like the thing of saying, oh, we're hiring and this is all the information. The policies in terms of, when it comes to that equal opportunity statement, what um how are you actually ensuring that that's being um effectively, um like, implemented? How are you actually heeding those words? How are you actually, like, making sure that the community is, um represented and included in that whole umbrella that is the job hunting process? And so my second question that I'd ask is, outside of that, is, um how, I guess, how is it, how, like, I'd also ask about, like, accessibility, and just what is, like, your business or organization doing to ensure that, um that accessibility is a top priority. And also, just, uh the third question would be, I'd say that the third question would probably be, um I think, in what way is, yeah, in what way is your organization, like, um, truly being um, open and inclusive to the disability community, and what is actually uh, being done to truly show that your organization accepts folks who are disabled to work at your respective agency or branch
Mhm.
of your organization, etc. So I'd say that those are the three things of many. If I had to pick three, I'd say those three are like top ones, the top questions I'd ask.
All very important questions that I myself would like answers to, and I'm sure our community would love answers to as well. I think that is the one frustrating part, or one of many frustrating parts of the hiring process, is that it is not transparent, which makes it harder to prove at times whether or not discrimination is happening. And it's like we can trust our gut, but yeah, I think we need those answers. I'm gonna say we need those answers from the
Oh, yeah,
employers.
for sure. The ableist approach is just it's outdated beyond words, and it's not effectively how things work anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's not gonna work anymore. Like we've been here from jump. We've been here as a community. We've been here, in the world. I mean, like we've been here in the world, just fighting from the beginning, whenever that was. Definitely before Judy was even born. You
way
know,
before.
like we've been here fighting for uh, our equal rights and our justice and all the things. So yeah, ableism is not gonna. It's not gonna work anymore. So we need to employers out there. You need to get like get your ish together, because this is just the fact that we're like almost 33 years into the ADA being a thing, and like this is still a tug of war on both ends. Like it's just like it's gotta end. So you know.
You said something, and it made me think of a question. Um, talking about like ableism. Do you think that ableism is, as it is right now, the ableism we face, ableism in general, do you think it's successful?
Honestly, oof, I mean, successful. I don't know if that's the word I'd use. I mean, in some I just feel like it's uh, successful. I think yes, in some instances, just by the fact that there are so many um uh you know people out there and businesses that claim to use the whole equal opportunity statement, and they put that label on there, and they don't actually like adhere to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, successful. I don't. I think. I mean, it's derogatory beyond words. Like there's just like such a um. Pardon my computer moving all around. There's just such a. It's just there's just such like a. I don't want to like say hate, but I guess empowerment within the community when situations like when ableist situations have to play out, and they do play out every day, like all the time, whether we
Right.
whether we see them or not. So I think just it. it empowers us to just, you know, fight fight through it and fight past it. And I think that again, that'd be like my message to employers out there. Like, I don't know if you've ever encountered a disabled person, visibly or invisibly disabled, visible or not. I don't know if you've ever encountered a disabled person in your life, like ever. But if not, you need to get in tune with it, because this whole thing of like the equal opportunity statement as just being used as a label, and then not following through with it is just, I mean, the stats are just crazy. I don't know them off the top of my head, but they're
Hmm.
crazy. The fact that like 15% of our world is disabled, y'all.
Right.
15%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but in the world, that is a lot. That's a lot of people. And
I
so
think it's 20. I think it's even higher. I think it's 20%.
15 to 20% or whatever the
That's
number
still a lot. That's
is.
a lot of people.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, for the employees out there, you need to really like get out into whatever community you're in the world, whatever language you speak, whatever it is, whatever language you speak, whatever wherever you're at in the world, you need to really get to know the people that are in your area, that are uh the folks that like exist just in general, everybody
Hmm.
that's in your community, because you know you never know, you might end up you know hopefully meeting some disabled folks who have just unique experience that can help you and your business really uh kind of make the positive impact that we need to see, that the positive impact that I believe my work is making on the community. So
Absolutely.
yeah, just get out there, meet them. They're out. We're out here. We've been here.
We've been here. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, we're people. Just talk to us, get to know us. Really just listen. Don't just like pass us off as whatever you want. Like, just hear us out. Listen, we have stories to tell. We are, we need to be listened to and amplified. So again, I think, uh, yeah, I'd say that's a message for employers, and I'd say that again, ableism, and as I said before, it's such a tug of war type thing, but like, again, it empowers us. So yeah, us as a community, and for employers that aren't doing anything about it, like you really need to, because for it to fall on us as a community to do the work to fight like discrimination of our own community. Like,
Hmm.
wait, where's the there's no like what's the thing called, logic. There's no logic there. Why must us as a community, why must we be the people that, I'm sure not. There's nothing against that at all. I'm not shading that
Yeah.
at all, but I'm just saying, like,
It
why is
can't
it
just
that?
be on us.
Yeah, it can't just be on us and our allies. Like, we have to, like, everybody in the world has to, especially the employers. They really, as I said, you got to really get out there and really talk to us. Like, we're out here, so you know.
Hmm. Exactly. Um, who do you look up to?
Uh, in the community, I mean, Judy for sure. I don't know if you saw she spoke at my eighth grade graduation. Um, I went to Huddy Junior High School in Brooklyn. We had our graduation ceremony at Brooklyn College at that time, and she was the keynote speaker. And obviously, I don't remember much of the actual speech, but
Hmm.
as I indicated in my post, the message there was just it just stuck with me, and it's been just uh, part of uh, one of the messages of positivity that I've just kept, like in the back of my mind, and just it's kind of been with me. Just and I mean, what do I look up to? I mean, other than Judy, ugh, other than Judy, I mean, obviously you, because this podcast, like, what?
Oh,
How?
thank you.
Like, this is such a amazing platform. Thank you again for just having it be here in our world. And uh I'd obviously I'd say what else? I would say like um the Black Disability Collective, for sure. They are um I do I've connected with some of those folks in that group, and they've just hearing their stories has just been just incredible. So I mean, but yeah, there's so many. I would definitely say um Issa. She's currently doing a webinar series with the ACLU right now. She's amazing. Um
Yeah,
yeah, truly, yeah. See, like she's just those are just some of the folks I um follow and connect with that I look up to.
love that. And thank you for that, by the way. That was really sweet. And wow, I kind of really lost words for that. Okay. Um, are there any questions I have not asked that you would like to answer?
Uh no, I think that pretty much sums it up, I think.
Okay, it's totally question. Now is the time for you to plug yourself. Where can people follow you? Where can people read the stories you are writing? Um, where can people read your master's project? Plug yourself. This is your space to do it.
So yeah, I have a whole link tree with all my
Mm-hmm.
socials, so I'll share that, and then I'll share the link to my capstone, which is on my website. So I'll share that link. But I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I was on Twitter, but being that is now being removed from my list.
Yeah.
Just all the stuff going on there. But Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Um, I'm also on Mastodon and Force. Those are two newish platforms for me for journalists.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter alternatives. Um, and I'm also on Clubhouse. Thank you to Marie. If you know Marie, she's I covered. I did a whole. I covered like the two of the sessions in the whole Disability Pride Month series that she did like
Yeah.
last year. That was great. Yeah, I'm on there. Although I don't really use that much, but I have a profile there. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, YouTube, Mastodon, Fourth. What else? Um, Mugrack is a backup platform, a backup place where I store my work other than
Mm-hmm.
my website. Um, and I have my data stuff on GitHub, which is I did all that like through my master's program. So there's that too. But again, I'll share all the links. And my project, uh, it is in addition to my website, it is on the CUNY Academic Works platform. So I'll share that link too because it can officially like be downloaded and kept in their history of stuff that you download. So um there's that too. So it yeah. So yeah, those are just my platforms and stuff.
Yep. And I will have links to all of that in the show notes as well as on the transcription page. So go follow, go read her work. Um,
Yes, and I'll share the
yes,
link
go.
to my Caribbean life stuff too. I have links. Yeah,
Yes,
one
all of
link
it.
for that, and I have and then yeah, and as I have you here, if you don't mind, I plan on
Of course.
putting this on YouTube just to kind of give
Yeah,
a just to get some more folks kind of
for sure.
in tune with the whole thing. So, but again, thank you for just having me on, and
Of
thank you for this
course.
platform. It's just great to to finally do this and talk to you because
Yes.
we've had to
We've
reschedule a
it
lot.
was a process getting here, but we did it.
Yeah.
Malik, thank you so much for coming on, for taking the time to talk with me, for doing the work that you're doing. It is so incredibly important, and we need more disabled voices in these spaces. So thank you for being one of them. Again, if you aren't following her already, please go do so. Please go read her work. It's incredible. Um, so before we wrap up, I kind of like to do, I don't know, I like to do an icebreaker, but it's at the end because it's more fun that way and it's my show. So I have 5 categories here and I just want to hear your favorite in each one.
Okay.
Okay. Favorite book.
Oof. Favorite book. What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna say favorite author of all time. My favorite
Perfect.
author of all time is Rick Riordan. By the way, for 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 nerds like me, there's a new book coming out in the original series, the first series that started it all for me later in this year. So I'm stoked about that. But yeah, Rick Riordan, he's everywhere. You just Google him, you'll find all his stuff, all his socials. He's great. I love his stuff. Um, but yeah, favorite author of all time. Check.
Check done. I think my brother can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's one of his favorite authors. So shout out, my little brother will appreciate that, and he can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. Um, Favorite TV show.
Oof. Favorite right now? Ugh, too many to count. To be honest, too many to count. Too many to count. Oof, gosh, too many to count. I can't. Too many to count.
It's okay.
Too many to count. There's way too many. Just, I mean, the networks I'm really plugged into right now. I mean, CBS, NBC, ABC. I have yet to get to. CW. Just like so much stuff. But but yeah.
Gotcha. There's a lot of content out there. It's hard to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
Favorite drink.
Oh, drink. Favorite drink. Oh, I mean, honestly, I love like favorite drink. Oh, I love a chilled Canada Dry ginger ale. Like that's like
Yeah.
anytime I like have that the opportunity to, I just go for that because that's. I mean, there's too many to count, but if I had to pick one, non-alcoholic, if I had to pick one, that'd be one, like the one.
There you go. Favorite piece of advice you've ever given.
Piece of advice I've ever given. Oof. I've given quite a bit of advice, but I think for folks listening now, I'd just say that, like, advice I'd give to disabled folks out there in the world, I'd say that, you know, uh, just keep going. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and that's one of the messages that I took away from Judy's speech, from my previous reference earlier. So I'd say that because, again, thank you, Judy. You just so yeah, I would say that's that's something that I would share with folks.
Perfect. And the last one, favorite piece of advice you've ever received?
I mean, again, I'd probably go with the same one because Judy, I mean, that's like, that's always been something I've kind of just had in my toolbox when it comes to just living life, and just anytime I need like inspiration of any kind, I think about that. So again, thank you, Judy, for just being as amazing as you were. It's still so weird saying that. Like, oh.
I know. But thank you so much. That was a perfect note to end on, for coming on, for sharing your story, for celebrating Judy. You can never do that enough on this podcast, or really on any platform. The final thing I just have to ask of you is for you to remind my listeners in your most fierce, most badass voice possible that height is just a number, not a limit.
Oh, yep, of course. Yeah, height. Whether I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter how tall you are. It doesn't matter what you know what your status is, what like all your race and gender and class and all the things. None of that matters as long as you're just doing something that makes you happy and something that leaves an impact on the world. That's all that matters. I mean, height. I mean, height does not matter. Height is not. Height doesn't limit you from prevent you from doing anything that you would like, anything you want to do. So yeah, height is nothing but a simple metric that is just unimportant.
There you go. Always Looking Up is hosted by Jillian Curwin and edited and produced by Ben Curwin. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and follow on Spotify so that you never miss an episode. Follow me on Instagram at Jill_Ilana and the podcast at alwayslookingup.podcast for updates, and check out my blog, JillianIlana.com, for more content about what it is like to be a little person in an average sized world. Thanks for listening. See you next week.